What's up everybody, this is Battlefield Channel 97 here, giving you a new series of videos of me putting my thoughts and opinions on a particular movie that is currently in theaters, not in theaters, VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, digital releases, Netflix, Hulu Plus, whatever the hell can I get my hands on the movie. I put my thoughts and feels. The thoughts and feels of movies. That is the title of this series of videos that I'm going to put my thoughts and feels on a particular movie that I really want to put my thoughts on. I have a script that comes on the computer to put my thoughts in it. And what I'm going to put with the thoughts and feels is, for one, I'm not going to show any screenshots. I'm not even going to show any videos of the movie itself. You can do that on Google or in YouTube. I don't want to have any copyright infringement at all. I don't want to deal with that bullshit whatsoever, so none of that. Even pictures, I'm not going to deal with it. And one thing, I'm going to do a system of likes of what I like, and then what I dislike, and I go back and forth. What I like, then I go with what I dislike. What I like, and what I go with dislike. Because for one, I'm not going to go with the whole cinematography, and then the acting, and then so forth, so forth. I'm just going to go with the like and the dislike, going back and forth. So that way you can at least see my thoughts and opinions to go for the whole thing. So anyhow, explanation aside, here are my thoughts and feels of The Man of Steel, directed by Zach Snyder. If there's one thing that I didn't expect from The Man of Steel, was the Superman that I was expecting, but I didn't get, but then I was okay with. The one thing that The Man of Steel is getting that many critics and fans of Superman don't like, is that this is the Superman where he's not the most ideal, Superman. He's not the perfect Superman that he was portrayed in the comics, like in the early days, where he's like the Ubermenschen man who, is such a dominant, and he's like the superhero that defied superheroes. Because even if there were superheroes before Superman, which clearly there was, he was the one that reinvented the superhero term, and that, he did the iconic cape and the emblem and stuff like that, and the secret identity that came with it. He reinvented it and became the superhero, the first superhero that came with it. And there became expectations of him being the ultimate man, the man that humanity looks up to and stuff like that. And many of these critics are just disappointed that they don't have that ultimate Superman, the ideal Superman that they have been accustomed to from the comics of Superman that they wanted to see in The Man of Steel. But what Zack Snyder and his team wanted to do for Superman in this universe, which is the first of movies to be in the DC cinematic universe that they're going to make for the Justice League, which I want to say, Warner Bros., don't rush this. Do not rush the Justice League movie, but that's another video of the discussion that came with it all. What they wanted to put with Superman in this universe, in this world, is to put him in the modern, cynical, dark world that came with it. And what if, like Superman, where he came into this world, and that many people didn't accept him, and they would see him as a freak, a force of nature that they want to stop, that they want to control. Not the Superman where in the past they'd be like, oh, Superman, he can protect us from all this force of evil and stuff like that. But it makes it sort of a logical sense of reasoning, because let's all be honest here. If Superman came into the real world, in our world, would we really be like, oh, Superman, he can protect us from shit like that? No. We would detain him, and we would question his existence, experiment him and stuff like that. And that's what this movie did. And from the one thing that I liked in The Man of Steel was they didn't do the whole linear flashback story structure sequence that many superhero films do in the origin, like in the Spider-Man movie from Sam Raimi. The first one, where it just makes this linear progression of Peter Parker, that he was still in the senior year in high school, and he had to continue further and further down the road. And while it's an okay origin story, it just gets tedious and boring. It's like, okay, get to the superhero stuff and all that other kind of shit, or get to him as an adult and stuff like that. What I like, and also in the Superman movies from the Richard Donner series, 2 of them, not the fucking other 2 movies, Superman 3 and 4. And the one thing that came with The Man of Steel was that once Kal-El gets into Earth in the space pod after Krypton is destroyed, you don't see him as like a kid as a baby, and then as a teenager, and then as an adult. You immediately go into a scene where he's already an adult as Clark Kent, and he's working in a fishing boat. I mean, he's a fisherman. Came with it, and then like in a few scenes within the movie, in certain circumstances, you then go into flashback that makes sort of sense in the next scene after that flashback is over, and I kind of like that sort of progression, and actually worked for me. So that's one like that came with it. And what was it? One dislike that I didn't like from the movie, but that I felt like the plot was too busy, and that they were just cramming too many shit, that it just made a major downfall would be by having the vast amount of content that they had to introduce in such a convoluted way that it was just ridiculous. They just squeezed in too many themes into this whole movie that you just, okay, you want to make it a piece of a drama, you want to make this a realistic portrayal of Superman, and then you want to make an action Dragon Ball Z flick. It's like you just putting too much themes, convoluted. It's like I don't know what to feel in some of those cases, which, to be honest, would normally be a good thing, but because they try to pack so many stuff into this film, it often touched upon only superficially, to be frank. I mean, compared to Superman 1 and 2, the Richard Donner versions, not the Leicester one in Superman 2, they felt like an epic, a play that you can just watch for one take in an hour, which originally Richard Donner wanted for Superman 2, but since, the studio was butting in because, the budget costs and stuff like that, they had to get another director and shit like that, and they fucked up Superman 2, and even with the Richard Donner cut, still wasn't the big epic that he wanted. And now I got out of the way, but okay. Compared to Superman 1 and 2, where they were more of an epic and grand storyline that it falls, even with the sequel, in Man of Steel, it just feels less focused and tight, even in one movie, with all of these goddamn themes they try to encapsulate, in my honest opinion. And I felt like they really wanted to make more than some summer action flick, which, to be honest, even with they try to make this and all the drama and emotion they want to, with the second half of the action film motif and all that other kind of shit, yeah, the battery come in, it just felt like more of an action flick when they went to the DBC action. So even when they tried to put so much with the story and the drama and his adopted father and all that kind of shit, it still felt like an action flick. So it just coexists whatever they were trying to make. So that's one dislike. The second like that I like was Henry Cavill as Superman. I didn't expect Henry Cavill to be a fantastic Superman, but guess what? He did a fantastic role as Superman, Clark Kent, and Kal-El. And for one, I never expected any actor to take in sort of in the same level as Christopher Reeves or even beyond him. In one instance, he is better than Christopher Reeves, but in one end, he's like on par or in worse conditions into what Christopher Reeves has to put out of the whole thing. And one thing that I did like with Henry Cavill's portrayal of Superman is that even if he was a British guy, I still felt like I was convinced that he was a small town boy, even if he was an alien outside of our world. He's got the body, he's got the physique, he's got the charm of Clark Kent and Superman. And when you have him in that suit, even with the red shorts that Superman has been iconic for, I didn't feel bothered with the whole thing, and the costume looks really nice on him. It looks very tight, and in the end of the movie, like, one comment out of the female soldier was like, he's kind of hot. To be honest, he is kind of hot, tight and all that shit. And he's got the charm, he's got the physique of Superman, he's got, the acting of Clark Kent and Superman. And the one thing that I love about him portrayed into this movie is that when he tries to give himself to Zod, because in the movie Zod tries to invade Earth, and and he wants Kal-El to turn himself in, or the planet of Earth is going to be destroyed for his action. But we all know Zod is not going to take that promise. He's going to destroy Earth and then tries to rebuild Krypton in his own image, in his own way, and become like the king and have his own bloodline state and for what he wants. And the one thing that I love what Henry Cavill did when he's acting is that I felt like he did the right thing and portrayed himself, and he gave himself into the army. And the funny thing is, when he is being interviewed by Amy Adams, who is the Lois Lane in this universe, or in this series of Superman, he's still stuck in these kind of chains, but we all know he's Superman. He can get with these chains, and then at later parts in the interview, he can just basically get up and he took the chain in and just go out of it. But he doesn't break in. He just stayed there and he was still there. And that's what I like. He was reinforced, and he wasn't like all this berserker rage or whatever the hell it may be. And he's very convincing with the whole punches and shit in the second half of the movie, so that's at least something. Henry Cavill, excellent Superman. Is he on par with Christopher Reeves? In my eyes, yeah. In some instances, nah, he can work his out, and I can see him being better in the sequel. Hope he does better in the sequel. So that's the second like. The second dislike that I didn't like was Clark and Lois's romance. There was no real depth. It felt pointless and it was contrived, and it didn't benefit the story in any meaningful way at all. So okay then. At the second half of the movie, for how all of this shit happened, and spoiler alert if you had any of this shit, Metropolis is like a fucking wasteland of destruction. Lois Lane immediately kisses Superman. I'm like, okay then, this is kind of a contrived bullshit, sort of in the same way of how Kristen Dunst's acting with Mary Jane. I didn't feel any conviction with the romance of Peter Parker and Mary Jane in the Sam Raimi movies, because I love the Sam Raimi movies, but the romance could have done better. And even then, The Amazing Spider-Man did that better as well. But get out of the country and trying to do the Man of Steel itself. There was no real contrive, there was no real depth out of it. But Lois was good in this version. It was just the romance was forced, contrived, and I would have liked them to at least have that romance blossom in the sequel, just like how Superman 2 did. Instead of just putting it in the first movie. It's like, what? And that was the first dislike I had. They just put too much shit into this movie instead of just putting little by little, and then putting that shit out there in the sequel. That's a second dislike, forced romance with Clark and Lois. But a third like that I like out of this movie was the amazing action sequence. All I had to say is, this is how the Dragon Ball movie, Dragon Ball Evolution, should have had in its action scene, instead of just some bullshit, contrived fucking CGI and shit, airbending in Dragon Ball. It's like, what? But the action sequences in Man of Steel were akin to the DBZ fights. It's like boom, and then flying throughout all the way, and then all the buildings were destroyed and shit. And many of the dislike that many critics and fans had with the movie itself was like, oh, why the hell is Superman destroying these buildings with all these people in? You gotta remember, this is still an origin story, and Superman is still learning, and hell, he might still be regretting somewhat of the action he had, even if he justified it by, helping the entire Earth stop Zod and his gain and whatever the hell it may be. The action scenes, blah blah blah, were amazing. They were just incredible. My only complaint, and this is another dislike with the amazing action sequences, is that they felt too long and like, okay, I get the point. These are Kryptonian gods fighting each other within the beautiful human species within Earth. And to see this wasteland within Metropolis. Okay, I get it. They're Kryptonian Hercules men. But okay, I get it. Stop with this long, contrived fucking action sequence. Superman and the Kryptonians, alright? They came out of it. Huge devastation within the Earth, world, whatever it may be. Amazing action sequence. Dislike out of that, it was long as all hell. Came with it all. What was another dislike? Oh yeah, the pacing. The pacing was just weird as all hell, and that could be accustomed to the one like that I put out of it, and was the flashback. The flashback could be like all drama and shit when Clark's adopted father in Earth makes this whole shit where like you have to suppress yourself. You should not reveal yourself to the world yet. Because if you are, they're not going to trust you. They're not going to understand who you are and stuff like that. It's touching feelings as well. But then when you go into the action sequence, it's like, holy shit, you're just going upward and a chain. It's like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. That's how the pacing of this movie is. They went from drama and then action. No, drama, action. Drama, action. It's like let me get the lights in. Lights in the computer for my face to put in the camera. Yeah, the pacing is just off as all hell, and I hope they fix that shit in the sequel as well. The one thing that I did like about the whole movie was the visuals. The visuals were spectacular from beginning to end, out of Krypton, from space, from Earth. Earth has especially beautiful cinematography out of the whole shit. From like the sequences where I think in the end of the movie, it's not a spoiler, it's just something where when Clark is like a small kid, he has the cape on, and it's a cute little moment of scene. It's like, it's a touching moment, and you know, we did that shit when we were kids. It's like, yeah, I'm Superman and all that kind of crap, and you know, it's a touching little moment that came with it all. The visuals were good, and in 3D, I had no problem with it. This is coming from someone who fucking despises 3D movies for how much it boosts up the cost of tickets, and it doesn't advance the story, it doesn't advance anything, even in the visual department. The only movies that I saw that justified 3D were Avatar and Up, and it's ironic because those are the only two movies that I have in Blu-ray. Those are the only two movies in Blu-ray, because they're good and work in 3D. Yeah, visuals, spectacular from beginning to end. That's not what I have to say. But the one dislike that I could put out of the whole movie was that I felt that the Man of Steel lacked some of the flair and the heart and the charm that would make Superman 1 and 2 instant classics and made superhero movies what they are today. Because even with Blade, even with X-Men, and even with Spider-Man boosting like the comic book movies from the 2000s, Superman made the groundwork out of it. Without Superman, we would not have Batman's Tim Burton. Without Batman's Tim Burton, we would not even have Blade, we would not have X-Men, we would not have Spider-Man, we would not have any of the shit that we have, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, every other shit that lead up to the Avengers and all that kind of crap. And because of that, we would not have the Man of Steel to lead up for the Justice League movie and stuff like that. So it spins all around to, yeah, I'm getting off topic and all this shit, that the flair and heart of what made Superman 1 and 2 classics. But I do prefer Man of Steel as a Superman movie in the modern sense of the word. But I still consider Superman 1 and 2 to be better movies as a whole, because watching them still invokes quite a bit of a feel for me. You know, in a classic sense, thanks to John Williams' score. Stuff like that. Sometimes the Man of Steel mostly did in a more superficial sort of way. This may seem silly in some instances, but to this day, I still can't bear to watch Clark giving up his powers and getting his butt kicked by that driver, even in the lesser version of Superman 2, which makes it sort of a surprising comeback in the Man of Steel, but not in the way, you know, get up your powers and get beaten up by some redneck hippie or whatever the fuck it may be. And one scene in the beginning of Superman where Clark is like a waiter in some kind of countryside, he doesn't fight against this asshole that basically harasses the waitress of the establishment he works in. And you know, we all know he could have kicked his ass. He's Superman, for fuck's sakes, motherfucker. But you know, he restrained himself. He didn't want to expose his powers to everybody. You know, he was the better man. He didn't fight him. Except for fucking up his own car, which everybody in the theater laughed their ass off. It's like, oh shit! That was a great moment. That was one thing that I wish there was more in this movie that came with it all. You know, I never got that same invoked feeling within Man of Steel to somewhat thing. But despite its flaws, wait, let me go one more like out of it, was the soundtrack. I was surprised that the soundtrack for the Man of Steel were actually pretty good, and I was surprised that the main theme for Superman in the Man of Steel was really good, and I think is one of Hans Zimmer's best scores, up there with the Batman series of movies from Christopher Nolan. And even though it can never fucking touch John Williams' theme of Superman. Whenever you think of Superman, John Williams' theme. That's all. But even without John Williams' theme in the Man of Steel, the main theme of hope, the hope of the S symbol that was what Krypton world is with the S and hope for Superman, invokes that with the soundtrack. Hope of fear, the feelings of fear, hope, loneliness, and stuff like that. That's the function out of the soundtrack. And I would never have one instance of tears, and I was actually going to cry in some instance in the movie, especially with the the scene where Clark is with his adopted father in Earth, and there were really touching moments. There were really, really touching moments that came with it. Maybe because I have my father with me here. We came out of it. So yeah, the soundtrack was pretty good. It's not on par with John Williams, but it still is a fucking fantastic score. And if I do have the money on me, I could get the soundtrack immediately on iTunes or in Amazon.com. Soundtrack excellent. So, despite the flaws, despite the positives that I put, I still love The Man of Steel a lot, and I think it's still worth the money for admission, and I think it's a well-deserved buy for you in Blu-ray and DVD, or if it's in digital releases, to buy the shit in digital. It's the greatest success to me that I can really enjoy a superhero movie that I wasn't really fond of, because even if I'm a fan of Superman, I don't really love him as a character compared to Batman, because Superman is just an overpowered motherfucker. I mean, he takes his own powers from the sun, and if he stays there for like months, he can just instantly become a god. How the fuck you write him? And that's what I like what they did with this movie. They make him weak and vulnerable because he's still not the uber-mentioned Superman that we still know of. This is still an origin story. Hell, Batman made mistakes in Batman Begins. He still wasn't the uber-mentioned Batman that we all know and love. He made mistakes that came with it. So despite all that flaws, and despite it all, this is the superhero of Superman. It's getting out of it. I don't have any. This is the Superman that doesn't deserve that much hate compared to what the critics want, because the critics just want that Superman that they have been accustomed to. They want this Ubermensch, the Superman of the iconic ways or whatever. You might get that in the sequel because this is an origin story and it tells that origin tale that came with it. Overall, holy shit, fuck this mirror. I've had holy shit, that was a movie experience. That's my quote for The Man of Steel. 5 out of 5, 2 thumbs up, whatever the hell it may be. Go watch it if you're a superhero fan, a Superman fan. And if you disagree with what I put, say in the comment below. If you agree with everything that I put, like, favorite. Hell, even subscribe if you want to support this new show that I'm putting out of it. And heck, I might even do even more superhero movies, regular movies, animated movies, CGI movies, whatever it may be. I'll do that shit. Put feedbacks in the comments below if you agree with what I put out of. And, put feedbacks to improve on this show. And yeah, that's all my thoughts out of The Man of Steel. It's a great, fantastic movie. This is Battlefield Chill 97. Catch you guys later. Have a wonderful, fantastic day.